Australian made and owned, Hi-Tech Oils is one of the largest oil blenders in Australia with a truly national profile, supplying an extensive range of oils, coolant, grease, batteries and much more for all businesses and consumer needs. Choose Hi-Tech Oils for peace of mind.
On today's show, we head to Sydney Motorsport Park to celebrate Australia's motor racing heritage. It's a new look to a crowd favourite as we present to you the Paynter Dixon Sydney Master Blast, incorporating the Australian Muscle Car Masters. This is Speed Week.
Racing on Father's Day has long been a tradition at Sydney Motorsport Park, and this year it's back, bigger and better than ever. This is the Paynter Dixon Sydney Master Blast, an action-packed weekend of racing in both day and night and on four wheels or two. There's legends everywhere you look, both people and cars, and a massive variety of action everywhere. And for Father's Day, there's no place we'd rather be. Welcome to the 2019 Paynter Dixon Sydney Master Blast, featuring Australian Muscle Car Masters right here at Sydney Motorsport Park. Hi everyone, welcome along to Sydney Motorsport Park for the Paynter Dixon Sydney Master Blast, an exciting event back on Father's Day, and we've got an action-packed show for you. My name's Richard Crowell. I'm joined by a local to these parts, Gary O'Brien. This is an exciting race meeting.
Reinvigorated, I like to call it, Richard. We've taken what was a tradition and we've just given it a bit of a jazz up and brought a few other components into it as well.
And as you can see, the lights are taking effect here at Sydney Motorsport Park. Here's what we've got coming up in the show for you today. The Paynter Dixon Touring Car Masters Series, they're here. The big bangers from the 1980s and 90s are back with Group A and C Heritage touring cars. This is a flashback to a fantastic era of Australian touring car racing. The DEA Performance National Sports Sedan Series will go at it, including one of the most famous cars in Australian motorsport. Group S, the history of sports car racing, are here, and they've got a massive field as always. This is cool. It's the final round of the National Supercar Championship. And if you've never seen these things before, take a step back. They're pretty exciting. Paynter Dixon Group N historic touring cars are on the program. Fantastic. And how about some two-wheeled action, a nod to the Isle of Man with the Sydney TT. Looking forward to that, and the final round of the New South Wales production cars. But the big story this weekend is that for the first time in this event, we go racing under lights.
Yes, look, it's fantastic. I know it's day one, but here we are just on sunset, and we're going to see Sydney Master Blast for the first time ever have night racing. We're so pleased because we've changed the name a little bit. We've called it Sydney Master Blast, but it still does contain the Muscle Car Masters as part of that, and we've got naturally the Touring Car Masters back, which is fantastic. The idea of calling it Sydney Master Blast was so we could also broaden its appeal, introduce night racing, and then tomorrow, of course, we've got motorbikes as well for the very first time.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's certainly a different thing. It's a real spectacle tonight with all the floodlights around, and it's really fun under lights.
Everything sort of seems to happen a lot faster, but it requires a lot more focus. So it's good fun. It's quite challenging and a new thing to try. So
I'm sure the spectators will come. It's very, very entertaining. It puts a whole new perspective on racing. The red, like the brake rotors glowing, the backfiring of the cars, the lights. I mean, a few coloured lights on the car. You know, it makes it entertaining. I love it. I think it's great.
Exciting times, and here's where we're doing it in the dark. It's the Druitt North circuit of Sydney Motorsport Park. It's a lot shorter than the Gardner GP track, and it condenses all the action down into a short little floodlit venue that will provide a lot of action. And that first action comes from Paynter Dixon Touring Car Masters. For the first time in their series history, they go racing under lights. Gary O'Brien alongside me. Aaron Seaton is off pole. this is something brand new for one of Australia's most popular categories.
Yeah, yes indeed. And here is the grid. It's Mustangs on the front row, Aaron Seaton in the 5 litre car, Steve Johnson in the 6 litre car, Ryan Hansford, Ryle Harris in behind him.
So, rolling start as is tradition. Short sprint race on the Druitt circuit. They had a standalone qualifying session. The top 3 cars were covered by a 1/10 of a second. And a great crowd in the house watching on as Aaron Seaton gets the jump in that bright orange Ford Mustang that leads them down. But Ryle Harris sweeps around the outside. He started further down the grid in the EFS Camaro, but on cold Hoosier tyres who commit to the outside at turn 1, they leave the floodlights and into the darkness here in Western Sydney. This is an incredible sight.
Well, spectacular motor racing. Watch them over turns 4A and 4B on this first lap. That should be interesting. If they don't go line astern, there could be drama.
Ryle Harris, 4th to 1st in a couple of corners, and the Camaro leads them over the hill. And instead of turning right, they're going left and then quickly right. This is the venue and the circuit layout they used way back in '96 when the touring cars raced here under lights. Long time ago. It's a great little racetrack, and all the drivers talking about how it was great to get 2 different circuit layouts in the same weekend.
It is, and they had a qualifying session on this one as well as on the long circuit, so they know which way they've got to go. And you can see as the cars thread their way around the corner, even Al Belgian has lights in the middle of the grille on the Mercury Comet.
Aaron Seaton with a great run down the straight, the 5 litre Ford engine screaming at 8,000 RPM. And he gets down the inside of Ryle Harris. Ryan Hansford in the Tirana tucked in behind. So as always, there's great variety in TCM. And look at Ryle. Under pressure, Hansford goes the long way around at turn 2. Brake discs glowing.
Can he hang on? That's the big question. He does. He gets through out of turn 3 and heads up over the hill.
This is a terrific circuit for these cars. They don't have a lot of tyre. They're heavy. They've got a lot of horsepower. And they slide and move around a lot. Drivers commenting about how much grunt it feels like these cars have got under lights in the cool, crisp air of this sensational Sydney Saturday. Up we go to the final complex. The EFS Camaro in good shape, but he's been hustled down the order a little bit. Oh, that's big! Hansford with a lose all on his own, and Ryle Harris has to take massive evasive action.
Whoa, how close was that? It's allowing the others up behind them too. They've caught right up and have probably left Seaton well out in front.
It's all right, Gary, you can open your eyes. They're all got through unscathed. Here it is again, so just missed the apex a little bit there for Hansford. Lost the rear of that car, and amazing driving, the multiple V8 Ute Racing champion, and that is a brand new Ford Mustang for Cam Mason, Newcastle's own, bouncing out over the exit curb and in real trouble.
Further back in the field, we've got Aaron McGill in the XW Falcon being monstered by Jamie Tilley in the 65 Ford Mustang riding behind him.
Tilley, a pretty famous surname in these parts. You'd expect to go well at Sydney Motorsport Park if you're carrying that surname. So that spin for Hansford has split the field, and it's allowed Aaron Seaton, third generation racer, to drive away. And now Ryle Harris finds himself under pressure from Stevie J. And this, we think, Gary, is going to be the championship battle at the end of the year as well.
It most certainly is, and we've got Camaro up against Mustang, 2 iconic American pony cars, and they're at it over here in Australia.
Down towards turn 1, these cars sound so crisp. Let's jump on board with the very fast Queenslander. You can see the temporary lighting that's been installed in the braking zone up to turn 2. It's a key overtaking opportunity, and check out the brake discs glowing on these cars.
Check out the tyre lock-up as well.
Yeah, it was a bit of a moment there. It shows you how hard they're driving. This race pays 10 points to start and 10 to finish, so it can have a role in the championship. It won't determine it in the end, but it's still valuable that you get to the finish. But just an opportunity for these drivers to go out and drive these amazing cars as hard as they can. Seaton's going to be clear and unchallenged in this. Looks like Adam Bracington just in behind in the VDC Camaro for White Line Racing. This fight for second place will go right down to the wire. I don't think Stephen Johnson can get down the inside. Aaron Seaton, though, under lights at Sydney Motorsport Park, the Ford Mustang will get the chocolates. It's a terrific drive for the third generation driver. Continues his remarkable season. Harris across the line in second. Stephen Johnson will be third in the first ever night race in the 10-year history of the Painter Dixon Touring Car Masters. There's the top three. Bressow to fourth, Cameron Mason, outstanding drive to fifth, down to Jim Policina, rounding out the top 10. But he'll be a happy boy, Aaron Seaton. His dad had some success here, but since jumping into TCM earlier on this season, he has been the man to beat. Pole positions, race wins, and the first one under lights for Painter Dixon Touring Car Masters. He wins the race. Stephen Johnson Pro Masters, and Jamie Tilley wins the Pro Sports class. Alrighty, from the souped up muscle cars of Painter Dixon Touring Car Masters, it's down to the real heritage of the sport. Thanks to Raging Waters Sydney, it's time for Group N Historic Touring Cars, the category also sponsored by Painter Dixon. From the early 60s right through to 1972, this is a look back at the history of Australian touring car racing. You saw Jamie Tilley on the podium in TCM. How about his old man, Gary O'Brien, starting from pole in Group N?
Yeah, Ford Mustangs pretty much hogging the front part of the field as well, as we're all set to go under lights here again at Sydney Motorsport Park.
Away we go. Good start, Tilley. These cars trying to put 600 plus horsepower to the ground. Some of them will tell you they've got a little bit more than that as well. But a clean start in front of a big crowd in that iconic Sydney grandstand. Capris and Tiranas further back in the field. That's part of the joy of Group N racing. There's such a variety of sights and sounds. And we saw the TCM cars battling with brakes up here at Turn 2, Gary. These things don't have the freedoms that TCM does. So I think by the end of 6 laps, as the little Mini has a big slide at Turn 2, I think, Gary, by the end of 6 laps, some of these guys might be hanging on a little bit.
Yeah, they might not have much in the way of glowing brakes because some of them don't have disc brakes. That makes it even more difficult, particularly the older NB cars, which are the cars that precede 1965.
Tirana just going up the inside there at 4A. They split that chicane into 2 parts for the Druitt circuit. But here's Brad Tilley. This guy has raced everything. He's succeeded in just about everything as well. Had a stint in what is now the Super 2 series in a supercar. Famous, of course, for that bright green GTHO in Touring Car Masters. And recently plying his trade in Group N historic touring car racing around Australia. And anywhere you rock up, there's a Tilley, and usually he's at the front of the field.
Yeah, indeed. And the car's got a bit of history as well. It was originally built by the Tilleys for Bob Cox. He raced it quite successfully over a number of seasons and then decided he'd had enough and wanted to go and sail his yacht around the world. So the Tilleys took it back and they've been quite successful with it ever since. In camera there you can see Aldo Di Paolo from Western Australia. We've seen him at the supercar events at Barbagallo and at the Bend, and he really dominated. But I think the opposition in New South Wales is a little bit tougher than what he's faced in the past.
And once again, it's that great pony car battle, Mustang v Camaro. It's the early model Mustang, 69 Chevy Camaro, XU1 Tirana in there. That's Peter Bugley having a nice run in that bright orange car back through the field. Ford Mustangs, but this guy finds himself under pressure. Adam Walton in the Mustang. 289 Ford V8 under the bonnet of this car, being chased down by the Camaro. And actually, this is shaping up, Gaz, to be a really nice fight for second, third and fourth place.
It is, and as you mentioned there, Walton's car also fettled by the Tilley, so they've got quite a hand in it. And here we got Escort versus Tirana. In the background, another Mustang coming up on the back of them as well.
It was never really a battle on the racetracks because the Tirana raced the GTHO Falcons back in the day, didn't it? But little Escort, it's the class rival for the Tirana in the sales department back in the 1970s. That Tirana is having a big go through turn 1.
The Escort down the inside takes that spot away. Doing a fantastic job considering, and obviously a little bit more nimble and better suited in the dark conditions.
Well, you're Graham Mulhouse in that 86 Ford Mustang, beautifully presented car, and you're minding your own business, rattling up to turn 2, and then this happens. So check out the difference in stopping power. So I reckon there's 3 or 4 seconds difference between the Mustang getting on the brakes and the Escort, and that's what probably 700 or 800 kilos worth of difference in race car will do for you in stopping performance.
is the Western Australian we mentioned before. Of course, they're here from all states. Bagley down from Queensland. We've got, as we said, this car from Western Australia. We've got them from all over the place. That's how keen they will come to race here in the dark.
Well, it is a thing that doesn't happen a great deal in Australian motorsport anywhere in the world, so it's very cool to see, and I think this is a real future selling point for the Painter Dixon Sydney Masters Blast, is make this Saturday night show a real headline, and it's great to see a heap of people floating around the paddock, sticking around, stayed here for dinner. The lights came on, the atmosphere was electric, like going to the Speedway. As we start the final lap, thanks to Fast Track and V8 Race.
Steve Land in the Ford Capri. Now, Steve Land's done quite a few Bathurst meetings in Capris in the day.
3-litre Capri as well, Gary. They were a very handy little race car. Never had the success they needed. They were outclassed in Australian touring car racing. As this battle goes on, this is terrific. This is what Group N is all about. Little capacity cars through the twisty stuff are better. Big V8s will drive away down the straight.
Yeah, no one's driving away further than what Brad Tilley is at the moment as he comes out onto the straight for the last time.
Well, it's been a dominating performance. His son on the podium in TCM won the class in a similar Ford Mustang. Brad Tilley will win the first night race for Group N here at the Sydney Master Blast. It's a terrific drive, nicely measured, and streaks the car home in front of Adam Walton. Aldo Di Pioli put the pressure on right at the very end, but how's the variety in the top 10? Pete Bagley, first of the XU1s, down to Macri in the Capri, bottom of the top 10. So there's a taste tester for you, but don't worry, more night racing coming your way after the break. Heritage touring cars and production touring cars hit Sydney Motorsport Park for the Painter Dixon Sydney Master Blast.
We spent a lot of time preparing it. We come to this meeting every year. Recently, we're only doing 2 or 3 meetings a year, so plenty of time to make it look right, to bring it along. And the main thing is we try and keep it off the walls and out of trouble.
In true Gardner style, we try to keep this in its best showroom condition when it goes to the track. And it's just been a privilege to own one of these great cars, one of the 6 that were built in 1987. This is the first of the 6, and it was raced by Tony Longhurst. It was a number 4 car initially. It also then raced with Ludwig Finau in the what they call AMS car series, and it was number 12.
It's George Fury's car, DR30. It's the last DR30 built, and it's still unrestored as it came off the track in 1987. As a group, I think it's really good that most of the Heritage Touring Car guys understand that the cars are the heroes here, and we're just owners of the vehicles that get to show them off to the public when we get the chance to race.
It's probably its most famous outing was Colin Bond and Australian Formula 1 champion Alan Jones, which they came third outright at Bathurst, and that was the meeting where a few of the Australian Sierras were protested, so they had to disassemble their engines after qualifying and rebuild them again for the race. And to still finish third is a pretty good outcome.
That's the good thing about Group C, even and Group A for that matter. You know, it's not just about the big cars; it's about the little cars, and you find quite often that the small cars have fantastic battles, better battles than the big cars. You know, some of the big cars get and they just bolt off into the distance. Where the little cars, you might have a pack of 5 or 6 of them all fighting for position. So there are races within races all the way through the field, and that's what makes the category so good.
It was a contentious era of Australian touring car racing at the time, but so fondly remembered now. The Group C 74 to Group A end of 92 touring car era is represented by the Heritage touring cars. It's a terrific class, and these cars are the real deal as they raced back in period, and that is hugely exciting. Here's how they start for their night race. Tony Karamfilowski, a familiar name in this part of the world, starts from pole. Terry Lawler, the next Dick Johnson racing car. The Sierras, predictably Gary O'Brien, dominated qualifying. Cool Air, wind up the boost and send it.
A bit like how they were in the era, isn't it? Those 2 cars out in front, iconic cars, ex-Glenn Seaton car, ex-Dick Johnson Ford Sierra. The last one that they built, actually, there's a Ford Mustang, a Greg Keem in behind him, ex-Laurie Nelson car. Group A cars seem to dominate the front of this field.
DR30 Skyline going down the inside, the middle of the field. Let's jump on board with Richard Allen, have a listen. It's the screaming sound of a BMW M3. These cars made their debut in '87. Jim Richards won the Australian Touring Car Championship. They ran them for 5 years, and by the end, they were still competitive at some tracks with those amazing Sierras and even the Nissan GTRs that dominated the sport. And this is a beautiful example, once raced by Tony Longhurst.
And certainly the Nissans, of course, beautiful sounding six-cylinder car before the Godzilla came along, of course.
Take the screaming BMW, normally aspirated any day of the week. Those Sierras have got their own note as well. Here's Tony Karamfilowski. Ignore the name on the side of the door. That's just the guy who used to race it, fairly famous surname. Jump back on board with Allen. He's up behind the Fox Body Mustang. And Terry Lawler, dramas, he was running second in the last car built by Dick Johnson Racing. He's pulled off to the side of the road. And even a BMW M3 Evo's got nothing for a Walkinshaw Commodore in a straight line.
Neil Chambry's restoration of the Gary Rogers VL Commodore as it goes through turn one there. Lines up Greg Keem to get a pass on that Mustang as well.
Cool to see Neil Chambry in the field because he's a guy that raced in this era of Australian touring car racing.
Raced that car, actually. Different colours by that stage, but when we talk about heritage touring cars, we're not just talking about how they did. It's even with the same stickers, the same spec of whatever era they picked.
Just a replay of what happened to Terry Lawler up out of the final corner, and then that pass by Chambry down towards turn one. A bit further back in the field, this represents Group C, and Group C was a class racing system, so you had the little cars rolling around with the big bangers like the XD Falcons, A9X Tiranas, Commodores and the like. The swap over point was 1985 when Group A, the International Touring Car Formula, came in, and gee, it was contentious, Gary, but man, it produced some very cool racing cars.
Yeah, initially they weren't as quick as the Group C cars, but they soon ironed that little problem out.
Yeah, I think they became less production-based as the era went on as well. And this is what Group A was all about, different varieties of cars running so closely and putting on a great show. The Commodore's got the straight line edge, the Mustang, which ran here in the hands of Dick Johnson and a couple of privateers in 85, 86, not quite as competitive. And then the BMW produces its speed in different areas. This a move up at turn two.
Little Escort goes under probably the oldest car in this field, the Holden Tirana from 1973 when we went to Group C.
73 Tirana, I hope they've got enough fuel to get to the end. You know what I'm talking about, that famous great race. And already lap cars in this as they start the final lap. There's a move on. That Mustang is going very, very nicely under lights and gobbles up Chambry in the Commodore. And I think the BMW might be able to grab one here as well.
Yeah, Mustang from the very early part of Group A, whereas the Commodore was probably right at the end of Group A, so you've got to take that into consideration as well. And I must say, Greg Keem actually drives that thing probably better than anyone did in the day.
Drives it properly hard, and doing the same here. There's the Sierra. You can check it out when it gets on boost and 600 plus horsepower. Fight its way to the ground. It's going to be a win for Tony Karamfilowski. He's an ace in TCM and he's loving his time in heritage touring cars as well. That's a commanding victory. A shame we saw Lawler drop out of that race because it was going to be a battle between the big turbo Sierras. Great drive, Keem. Well done. Just misses out on a spot in the top three. Chambry fourth, Allen fifth. Great drive, great racing. The heritage of Australian touring car racing.
Painter Dixon is a family-based business, and motorsport's been in the family DNA for all these years. It's great to see the people of Western Sydney and also the broader Sydney community come out and see a fabulous event in the muscle car event. And growing up, I used to come in on Father's Day as well with my father and the Muscle Car Masters, and I'm just happy to be a part of it. Nothing's better than a loud V8. You know, the old cars, especially the touring cars, are fabulous to see. The race times are wonderful, and the noise is even better, especially when you see the kids with the joy of seeing a motor start up and hear the noise. It's wonderful.
Great to have Painter Dixon as part of this event in 2019. Right, this is going to be exciting. More than 30 cars on the grid. Shockwave signs New South Wales production touring cars. This category going from strength to strength. And some of the heavy hitters of production car racing in Australia, Gary O'Brien, are on this grid.
They certainly are, and they've got plenty to fight for here. Not so much in this race. This is non-points gathering for the final round of the New South Wales production touring cars, but look at the quality of the field.
So Turbo BMW M4 on the front row. Four-wheel drive Turbo will get the start, though. That's Jimmy Vernon. He's had a lot of success in this category and launches the Evo 10 off the outside of the front row, and he'll beat Anthony Sewell into that fast turn one here at Sydney Motorsport Park. Whole bunch of Holden high-performance cars tucked in behind, and just a whole bunch of cars full stop filing their way through under lights at turn one.
It's very congested back in that field. You can see a big field of cars as they thread their way through turn two for the first lap.
Now, there's one guy to watch is Tony Virag. He was going from further down the field in this, Gary. Had some technical problems with his car earlier in the weekend. Actually left the track and went and got a backup.
Yeah, very lucky that when you say some engine problems, that went kaboom, and that was the end of it. And then he's borrowed the Joe Canolis HSV GTS, started rear of the grid.
And it's a massive field. 36 cars took the starter just a lap ago. There is Tony Virag. He's a hugely experienced guy. It's been good to see the success in the HSVs in New South Wales, especially. Matt Holt's car had an amazing run at the Bathurst 6 Hour earlier this year and got themselves a huge outright result. Have a look at the variety working their way through. Evo Lantis HSV, class racing, remember? And now the battle on for the lead. And in recent times, there've been no stopping BMW's M4 in this brand of racing, but it's a wheel-to-wheel battle. The Evo will have mid-corner speed, the horsepower the way of the BMW, but check out the Evo on the brakes. Jimmy Vernon sends it round the outside. This talented Sydney-sider, he can really drive, and he is throwing everything at Sully, who's leading the race. Or is he? He's not, because the Evo's back in front.
It's the punch out of the corners. That's the difference at the moment. In a straight line, of course, the BMW has the advantage.
He's got to drive so hard at this part of the circuit, though, Jimmy Vernon, because by the time they get back onto the Brabham front stretch here at Sydney Motorsport Park, he'll get gobbled up. Is there contact?
No.
Very close.
Look at the punch out of this corner. This is where the four-wheel drive has the advantage. And it's like a shot out of a gun, really, isn't it?
No traction issues for an Evo.
Bit of traction issues there, though.
Well, the outside of turn one is not the best place to be at the best of times at this place, let alone under lights when you can't really see anything. High-speed corner, even in a production touring car. Big V8 rumbles down. A great sight. This short circuit, the Druitt track, is terrific, but with 36 cars, it's basically full when they get a couple of laps into a race, Gary, so there is action everywhere you look.
Yeah, we could have lap traffic in this before the end of it as well.
Garth Walden just taking on to the back of this in the AMG A45. Big temperatures in the front rotors on that car. They've been a successful car in production touring car racing over the last couple of years, couple of podiums at Mount Panorama. Garth Walden can drive, and can drive this place too, Gaz. World Time Attack champion a couple of years ago at this very circuit.
More action down the field as we see them going for this, what they call 4A and 4B turn, and you can even see that they're punching wheels off the ground as well.
How's the disco lights on Matty Holt's GTF or GTS HSV? That thing looks outstanding. There's been so much effort put into putting this night race program on. Saul's got the lights across the top of the BMW, disco lights under a bunch of cars, different coloured headlights. It looks spectacular. They're putting on a great show.
Also helps us identify one car from the other as well.
True. Gee, Matty Holt's a good race car driver, isn't he? He's crept up on it over the last couple of years, but been bashing out some very, very strong results.
Flickering lights there, that's the brake lights working. It tells you that the ABS has kicked in.
It shows how hard they're driving. This is about the perfect race distance for the big HSVs. They weigh a lot, they're heavy, they use up their tyre quite quickly. They slide around, so a short race on a short track is just about where you want to be. Here's the Raceway track time Nissan Pulsars. These are a staple of state-level motor racing in New South Wales.
Yeah, Phil Alexander has been around the sport a long time. come out to have a bit of a play in one of the many classes that race within production car racing in not only Australian production cars but in New South Wales.
Gary, this is the run to the line. It's close. Sewell got boxed in lap traffic, and Jimmy Vernon will just lose out to the horsepower of the BMW. But he threw everything at that in the final corner. The lap traffic worked perfectly for him, and he just misses out. Half a car length in it, and the horsepower of the BMW saw Anthony Sewell home by just a couple of tenths of a second. What a terrific race. Tony Virag through the field to third. So that's the night racing component done and dusted. Gee, it was exciting, but stick around because after the break, we jump onto the Gardner GP circuit for the Day 2 program here at the Painter Dixon Sydney Master Blast, where all the legends are watching. Welcome back to Sydney Motorsport Park. It's a beautiful day and it's Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. We're on the Gardner GP circuit. We're looking forward to the next couple of races from Painter Dixon Touring Car Masters. Before that, let's hear from some legends. How about some famous surnames like Johnson and Bow? They're here today.
Well, it's been better for Steve than me, but we love the category. I got him into it a few years ago, which was probably a bad thing for me because most of the time he's beaten me, but I conceded in the fact that as a young boy, I used to teach him a lot. Another mistake I made. So the cars are awesome to drive. They're very powerful, haven't got a lot of tyre grip and got absolutely zero aero, which I think, anyone that reads my social media knows that I think aero ruins motorsport. So,
well, they are. They sort of almost remind me a little bit of the old V8 supercar, the pre-car of the future. And although they got probably more horsepower and a smaller tyre, so it's a little bit trickier to drive. And I just love driving a car with still a H-pattern gearbox. And then John knows you've actually got to have a technique to drive these cars. You can't just get in and go. You've got to actually really understand how to get the most out of them, and it's very tricky.
So we turn our attention to the Gardner GP circuit, one of the more iconic layouts in Australian motor racing. She's a tricky racetrack. There's lots of long, loaded, fast and flowing corners. The big hairpin right-hand overtaking opportunity. In fact, there's a couple of them on this layout. Now, we're going to take a look at some highlights, Gary O'Brien, of race 3 of Painter Dixon Touring Car Masters. This was a championship points-paying race, and it also provided one of the most wild opening laps we've seen in the category this year.
Yeah, very bad start from Adam Bressinger, and he slipped back down the field, but look at the action up the front. Let's hope that everyone remembers to turn right at turn 4.
Roll Harris spent most of the opening lap of this on the lock stops trying to get the EFS Camaro straight. Johnson was up the inside, that always tight run out through turn 3 and then over the hump at 4 and down the hill. The man to watch though was John Bow. He was pretty fired up. Success has been a hard time coming for the 5-time TCM champ this season in the Painter Dixon Pace Holden Tirana. But a great move on Stevie J at turn 1. That was the first of many though.
Oh yeah, because as you can see there, Bow ran a little bit wide out of turn 1 and Stevie Johnson came back up the inside to take that spot and a little bit more by the look of it.
How's the friendly fire between the old mates? That wasn't the end of the battle. Johnson had a huge moment coming out of Brocco 5 corner. Big bout of oversteer trying to get the horsepower in Mustang Sully to the ground. And Bow finally cleared car 17. That's his old race car, remember. Jamie Tilley unfortunately struck dramas up at turn 2. And after being on the podium under lights, his day ended quite early in this one.
Bow continues to move forward in the field. Now he tackles Ryan Hansford for another position. And these two, of course, Tirana's a bit more even in performance, but Down at turn 6, JB does it all again.
Bow's car had a drop valve in qualifying and unfortunately missed the night race, so he sat that one out, but it means he's got fresh rubber for this one, and he was able to blaze his way through. Now that was big. Aaron Seaton slowed. He was the early leader, and that allowed Ryle Harris to jump through, and it set up a thrilling final lap as Aaron Seaton dropped back through the field with some dramas. Ryle Harris found himself under pressure. You never die wondering with John Bow. Certainly didn't in this one. He got so close. In the end, 350 cubic inches, just got past 304. Straight line performance was key for Ryle Harris. He won the race by a 10th. Ryan Hansford third. Terrific motor race though. Cameron Tilley, Zakanovic and Bruce Williams completing the top 10 in race 3 of TCM.
Yeah, mate, there's a lot of hours going into it. We've been working pretty hard. Obviously, we come over from Perth every year, and the car's always evolving and developing, so it's great to be involved in the DA Performance Sports Sedan Series. So the car started as a 1986 Alfa GTV. This car was built in 1992, but it's still got the original roof, A, B, C pillars, steel panels, doors and hatch, so it's all steel as the original car, just a bit of weight taken out of it. When the original sports sedan rules were made, that's how the category was. A lot of the new rules now, you can have carbon fibre composite parts, roofs and everything. So this is still the original car as it was built. Obviously under the body shell there's always developments, suspension, newer shock absorbers, a lot of aero add-ons that have made the cars faster. This car's originally a 6-litre Chev with a torque tube through the middle, 2 monocoques and a Hewland transaxle in the back.
It's one of the most famous and most successful cars in all of Australian motor racing. Shannons are bringing you the DEA Performance Australian Sports Sedan Championship. These are the big bangers, Gary O'Brien. We love them. We love the Tony Ricciardello Alfa. We love the Aston. We love the Audi. We love this category, full stop.
There's not much you don't like about it, is there? And look at the quality of the lineup. Tony Ricciardello on pole, Jordan Caruso alongside him, Steve Tomasi in third.
So Ricciardello, a winner on Saturday here. These cars didn't race under lights. There's a pretty logical reason for that. No headlights in sports sedans, so daytime running only at a circuit where we've seen some epic battles between the Audi and the Alfa over the years. And young Jordan Caruso, who's been racing, of all things, a Hyundai Excel for the last couple of years, is now in one of the most potent cars in the country. Up to turn 2 they go. Ricciardello in front. In the Alfa Romeo, it's busy behind. Tomasi looking up the inside of Woodman. Ricciardello just loses some ground on the exit of turn 2 though. The field compresses and it's still side by side for third.
Yeah, it looked like Caruso got checked up there as well when Ricciardello had that little bit of a drama. But Shane Woodman in the BMW bodied car, the next one through. There goes Scott Reed, of course, in his Trans Am car. And here's his battle for second at the moment. Young Jordan Caruso, his first season in the monstrous Audi with its big Chev power plant somewhere under the bonnet.
It's more like under the windscreen, mid-mounted in these cars. It's an amazing class. It's been a staple for decades. As Tomasi tries to squeeze down the inside round the back of Corporate Hill, there's generally no room there, and the BMW certainly didn't leave any for him to go through. So young Stephen is under some serious pressure, and now he's got car 12. That's Phil Crompton's Ford Mustang up behind the RX-7, tucked in behind that battle pack. As always in sports sedans, it's a variety of shapes and sizes. This car's been a favourite for the last couple of years though.
Even been sorted by John Bow at one stage. He had a bit of a time at the wheel behind it. There's Phil Crompton's Mustang in the background. Steve Tomasi missed the last round. They had dramas earlier in the season with an engine fire and unfortunately couldn't get it fixed for round 3, but back for round 4, and there he goes up into third spot.
This old man famous for a pretty iconic incident down at Phillip Island back in the 2000s with Dean Randall back in the day, over and under, flips and helmet throwing escapades down there, but the Domain Prestige Homes livery has been a famous one in sports sedan racing, and that was the pass down at turn 1. Tomasi gets the job done. Caruso and Ricciardello a long way up the field. There is Caruso, jumped into that car this year. Jack Perkins has raced it for the last couple of seasons with success.
And Darren Hossack before that had some success in the car, actually won the championship in it.
Wasn't that a cool era with Hossack v Ricciardello? I think history will look back at that very fondly. Here's Smith looking down the inside of Larry Perkins lookalike Commodore down at turn 6 at the back of Corporate Hill. That's a nice pass. The Monaro goes through.
Here we've got Phil Crompton on the back of Shane Woodman. A good battle going on there. Alex Williams in the background in his Mazda. The Phil Crompton car, it's only 5.5 litres. It gives away about half a litre to the cars around him. He reckons it makes it more tractable out of the corners, gives him not quite as much punch in a straight line, but certainly a car that's more drivable in his opinion.
But if there was ever a category, Gary, where the old adage, there's no substitute for cubic inches, was a truism, it would be sports sedans, surely. You'd go the full 6 litres if you could get it. Might help you get out of corners, but if you get beaten down the straights, you're not going to be doing much passing. And the BMW proving that because it has all the answers at the moment.
Crompton are now trying to use the Mustang's advantage, which is the slightly lighter engine and the more tractable power. Further back in the field there, we've got a couple of Monaro body cars, one chassis, one sports sedan, of course, or what we call space frame.
So there are a couple of classes in sports sedan racing that allow for cars that are more showroom spec with some extreme modifications but without the custom-built space frame chassis. Look at Woodman's BMW under brakes at turn 6. Really affected by the bumps. They run these cars so low to get the maximum amount of effect from the aero that these cars have got. They've got full under trays, massive rear diffuser, and well, you can see the massive rear wing. They run them low, so that means they have to run them stiff as well. They don't react kindly to bumps.
And they're fairly light on top of all that, so that also accentuates any time they hit any of the big bumps.
Tell you what, the pace has been quick this weekend as well. The lap record in the 28s, but they've been running mid to low 29s all weekend. So Sydney Motorsport Park is fast and the field attacking it at the moment quick as well. Down the Brabham Straight towards turn 1 where these cars are a sight to behold. If you go and plonk yourself on the hill on the outside of this corner and watch them hammer in, it's a lot of entry speed, and because of the aero, it's a lot of mid-corner. Let's enjoy this. This is Tony Ricciardello. It's a Sunday drive for the West Aussie. Arm on the windowsill, Peter Brock style.
One hand on the wheel there.
It selects the gears so quickly, this most famous car. And Tony Ricciardello will grab another victory to add to the many, many hundreds in his remarkable sports sedan career. Stephen Tomasi across the line. I thought that was a good drive after that early battle he pulled away from Woodman. And it was an entertaining fight in the National Sports Sedan Series. Ricciardello, Caruso and Tomasi, the top 3. Good battles through the field as well. Stick around because after the break, it's the final round of the National Supercar Championship from Sydney Motorsport Park right after this.